Hi, this is Pam with ROC Metaphysical. We're doing another YouTube interview. Just a little background, ROC Metaphysical is a metaphysical online magazine. If you Google ROC Metaphysical.com, that's all one word, you'll find the magazine. Monthly, I have new articles posted up. And I also have event information and business information, calendar, all kinds of things. So make sure you check out the magazine. So today we're interviewing an author that I met at a recent event. And before we videotape, we find we have a lot in common. So this should be a lot of fun. So I have Julie, who currently lives in Central New York, not far from where I am, which is Rochester, New York. So go Central New York. She's written a book. And when I read the bio about the book and the writer, I thought, oh, this is so interesting. So I like the fact that this was like a journey for you or search for information. You were living in Germany, I think it was. And you fell upon a book and then things happened. So why don't you tell me?
Well, actually, Pam, I was living in Austria, but they do speak German in Austria. I lived in southern Austria, close to this castle called Regensburg, about a half hour away. And they that year they had 1 year in the 1600s, they burned 60 people, accusing them of being witches. And that kind of got me interested in that whole storyline.
All right. So, but when you found this book and you read it and you're like, boy, I want to know more. And things happened because of that, correct?
Oh yeah, so originally when I was in Austria, I was still searching for my spiritual like religion or path, and I stumbled on a book written by an Austrian woman called Judith Janberg, and it said, "Ich bin eine Hexe," I'm a witch. And when I read it, I was like, and it was very nature based and nature orientated. And I just read it in German. I was like, oh my God, that's who I am. And so I met her, and that set me on my path of reading more, attending workshops about the goddess and witchcraft, and exploring that until I came back to the States, where I also took many workshops and joined covens, and that put me on my path of becoming a priestess of the goddess and a witch.
All right. And so we probably should clarify, although you and I probably understand that your studies was about more earth-based and looking at the positive power that we all have. And it wasn't, how the typical stereotype is, dark and black and scary and doing evil things, that this was more about earth-based herbs and, working with nature. And, if you want to talk about that and give us a little understanding of the difference.
Yeah, for me, it was mainly because in a lot of the major religions, I couldn't find myself in the divine feminine because there was just a divine male. And so I was always looking for that connection to myself as a woman in divinity and finding that priestess part of myself. And then the women that I studied with, they were all connected to the natural events of the year, like the harvest season, or like the solstices. And so when I started studying it, they were connected to like healing arts, like the herbal medicines that were passed down through the generations, midwifery, that was a women centered thing. And so I think for me, it was not about looking for becoming the wicked witch of the West or anything like that, but it was more like looking for that archetype of a healer in my European ancestry, right? And that I discovered through studying it that there's this whole paganism that was before Christianity, and that a lot of our Christian religions, like Easter, is based on Ostara, which was a pagan festival. So that really interests me to go, back before Christianity, look before that, and what was the role of women in the divine feminine. And I found out that there's a lot of goddesses there, and that it's not just women centered or men centered. It's, for me, I found polytheism. So it's the goddess and the god.
Right. And that's what I have found, when I've attended different functions and have been at different rituals. I liked the earth base, because if we didn't have earth and all the good things that earth has and provides, we probably wouldn't have been surviving this long. So I like the fact of giving thanks, for like the harvest, the bounty, because, I grew up in central New York. I mean, it was farming was a big piece of employment, and, abundance of food, corn. I mean, I think about all the vegetables and fruits. I mean, I had an apple orchard out behind my house, and it just was so abundant. And, I guess you think about it now and how lucky I was to have that surrounding me, without realizing. Now, I mean, people don't have that as much anymore. And acknowledging the components, like earth needs the moon, so the moon has some involvement, and especially with women, we're tied to the moon. And so I just like all those positive things about that. And I think that's, you and I kind of agree on that part, and also acknowledging those things as a ritual. And then that makes community, which I think, you and I are probably the same. It's nice to be with people who have that positive aspect and want to celebrate that part, and like that too. So, all right, so back to your search, and you found that book with that woman, and then you started investigating and gathering all this information and reading lots of books, you told me, and developing your point of view. Then you wrote a book.
Well,
so tell me about it.
Well, the reason, I was always a voracious reader. I love to read. And I decided to take a writing class about 12 years ago. And when I was taking the class, my teacher, Megha David, said she was wonderful. It was a novel boot camp, and I just couldn't find my way into finding what I wanted to write about it originally. And I noticed that one of the students was writing about foster care of Native Americans, because she had that connection and she wanted to bring that story out. And then another young man was writing about coming of age. And then I thought to myself, she goes, write about your, what are you really passionate about? And then I sat back and I thought to myself, oh, I'm really passionate about my religion. And so that's where I started writing about. I thought, well, what could it be about? And I thought, oh, there are no historical books of shadows, which are books of shadows are books that are passed down from generation to generation, where they have like maybe spells in them. They would have a lot of herbalism in it. They would have like lunar charts in it and stuff like that would be passed down. And I thought, wouldn't that be interesting if a young woman inherited a book of shadows from her grandmother, who she thought was Catholic? And that set me on the whole thing. And then I went back to Regensburg, where I used to live. And then I thought, oh, that is going to be the perfect story, because it's about women legacies. And it's also about how this knowledge that was there was broken down through the Inquisition and the witch burnings, because every town had like a healer. They were women and men, and they just knew about herbalism. They were shamans. And if they weren't killed, they went underground. So I wanted to bring that up. And I don't know, and then I was reading, I like I said, I read a lot. I was reading Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code, and I loved it, by the way. And at the end of it, it said, could there be a divine feminine? And I was just like, yes, there was a divine feminine. And then I just kind of went on the search for writing my book, if that makes any sense, and kept writing and took workshops, and have a writer's group right now. And that sent me on the path.
Well, and I'm sure you had to do a lot of kind of historical digging to, put it in, chronological order. So is some of it or all of it historically accurate, or is it just kind of you picked a few things and then just kind of filled in the story? Like if there was witch trials or I think I remember some dates that you had in there. Those had to be, like true events, and then you've kind of filled in the rest.
Yeah, that's how, well, the original, the first part, my story is written in 3 time periods. In the first time period, the main character, Elizabeth von Gala, actually is a historical figure, and her maid, Katrina Paldorf, actually existed. And Katrina Paldorf was burned at the stake as the Witch of the Flowers. So that part of it is very well researched. And then I just kind of created that they wrote a book of shadows. I don't think they did that. And the second part, which is in the 30s, was also researched about Nazism and why my second character, the grandmother, left Europe, right? Because her husband was Jewish and she had visions that there was something bad happening, which did, and was able to convince her husband to leave Europe before it all went down, the Holocaust. And then the third part of the novel is it's all fiction.
No, well, I like that. I mean, there is some historical aspect, so you can kind of get a sense of history. So you go, oh, okay, had no idea that this was going on, in Austria. I mean, you watch movies and you read books and it's always about Great Britain, so we don't think about Austria, Germany, that aspect, at least for me, and my ethnic heritage is Great Britain. So, if it's something about that, I'll read the book or watch the show, and now this is just giving another piece of history to us. So I think it sounds very interesting and I can't wait to get the book. And I saw the book cover, do the tiger lilies, I think that's what they are, the orange flowers.
Red amaryllis. Red amaryllis.
Okay, so does that have some significance?
Yeah, because the red amaryllis is a flower that is reborn and it comes back every year. And the first character who was burned at the stake was the Witch of the Flowers, who knew how to bring flowers to bloom at winter, right? So that follows throughout the whole, it's going to be a trilogy. I'm working on the second book about the idea that, because in my religion, I believe in rebirth in a certain way. But there's a really funny thing that happened when I was writing this book that I just kind of wanted to share because of this is a platform about spirit. So when I was writing the book, the first part of the chapter or the first part of the book, I wrote about there being a goddess in Austria called the Lady of Light. And I wrote a passage where somebody dies. I don't want to give away everything. And I used the term Lady of Light. And funnily enough, afterwards, I did a little research after I wrote it. And I researched that under the Martins Church in Regensburg, there was a Mary Magdalena chapel. But under the chapel, this is historical fact, was a pagan temple. And that there was a tribe. They weren't called Celts, they were called Norichis. And there was a tribe of Norichis that lived there, and they had a goddess called the Lady of Light. I had such chills. I thought, oh my gosh, how did I figure that out?
I got some now, so.
I felt like spirit was talking to me that this book needed to be told. So I also researched more after that to realize that a lot of the churches, and I'm not putting down the Catholic Church when I'm saying this, but a lot of the churches were built then on meridians that were built on top of pagan sites that originally were pagan sites.
I've also read that. I mean, I think there's a couple books where they've written about, that because the organized religion was trying to overpower the local religious paths, if it was pagan or whatever, and that they would build over those sites, but it was probably also due to it having a ley line or some energy significance there too. So
Exactly. It was very interesting for me writing this book, because I had a couple of those moments where as I was writing, I'm like, how did I know this? Or did I remember it from reading at some point? But I don't think so. The one with Lady Light really shocked me.
well, you know, I think maybe you were getting a couple little clues along the way to let you know that you were doing the right thing.
I think so too. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So where can people find the book?
Amazon.
Oh,
So
okay.
on Amazon, I have actually a paperback, a Kindle, and an Audible.
Have you got your book with you so we can see what it looks like?
I do, and I'd love to cover. My editor and my publisher did the cover. It's you can see the goddess looking down. So this is called The Witches of Regensburg. It's kind of hard to pronounce for because it's a German word, right? And that's how you can know by looking at those red flowers. Yeah, The Witches of Regensburg.
Right, and so it's Julie Ann Stratton.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, and so they could Google by your name. And then do you have a website?
I do. I do. It's also www.juliannestratton.org.
Okay, because you did share with me that you teach classes, so and some may be on Zoom. So if people have saw this interview and read the book, they might go, huh, I think I might want to take a class. So they should check out your website, excuse me, to see if there's an opportunity for them to do a Zoom class with you.
Yeah, I do have it on the Philosophy and Magic of Wicca. That's on my website as well, with all the information for people to sign up around.
Okay.
Yeah.
So any last words for us before I hit the stop button?
I just want to say thank you, Pam. I have really enjoyed meeting you, and I hope that we can do more together. That's what I hope.
Yeah, me too. All
Ritual
right.
or having
Well, thank you.
Thank you.